mention to people, we want to defend the Second Amendment, the first thing that comes to mind is, and no offense to those who are wearing the hunting attire, is just, rednecks wandering around in a Dodge Durango out in the backwoods somewhere preparing for the revolution. And as it turns out, look around, we've got a fairly good cross-section of Delaware here. We've got a lot of young people. We've got a lot of people who see guns as a pastime, a way to defend against a tyrannical government, and a responsibility to all Delawareans and all Americans that cannot be taken away. I'd like to discuss a little bit. We had a meeting with the governor's people this week. I'd like to tell you a little bit about where the process is, because of course, this is a process. It's an oftentimes confusing one. I don't think anybody here is just discussing. I don't think anybody here objects to the idea that we want to keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. I think everybody here agrees with that. How to do that is oftentimes, the devil's in the details. Well, yeah, it's the devil's in the details. So, expanded background checks, it's something that the governor's looking at. A national mental health registry, something that the governor's looking at. Both of those ideas strongly supported by the NRA, strongly supported by our caucus, assuming they're written correctly. Now, some of the less agreeable things. 1,000 feet of a school. No firearms within 1,000 feet of a school. Well, I'm a graduate of Smyrna High, and for those of you who know the area, there's ball fields across from Smyrna High School. Now, if some person were to pull up to those ball fields with several firearms tucked in a waistband, and they were to sit there and stand there, and somebody were to see them, the cops would be called already, right? So the purpose of this law is to
stop honest citizens.
That's right. Now, what I've been told is that the way this law will be written is that they're going to write in exceptions in the law. That if you have a concealed carry license, you will still be able to go through that area. I've also been told that if you are going hunting and you have your firearm in the back of the car and you're dropping off your child at the school, there will be an exception. What they didn't tell me is if you happen to be driving through large parts of Smyrna or Clayton, would then be off limits if you just so happen to be driving through that area. They haven't let me know how that's going to work. They haven't let us know if that will be an exception. And of course, that's everybody's here's big concern. Am I all of a sudden going to be a criminal driving down Main Street in Smyrna?
What about open carry?
Open carry, we've had no mention of, I didn't know. We've had no mention of open carry.
We have that in this state.
I'm sorry?
Open carry is allowed in this state.
Yes, it is. Certain municipalities have issues with it.
Yeah, but then they can then they can just arrest you for disturbing the peace or some other hassle they can do.
Well, that's our concern, that's the way the law will be written, that if you have your gun in your car, and it just so happens you have your gun in your car and it's open or it's in the trunk, it's a hunting gun, are they going to be able to pull you over on Duck Creek Parkway or right out in front of Parkland School? Are they going to be allowed to do that? The fact is, we don't know, the governor's people don't know at the moment.
What about Smyrna High, that they have the FFA, actually has a hunting class, and the kids actually bring their guns to school and go out to class? What you're doing now is violating.
I did that in high school, and again, I don't know how they're going to do that. In high school, what we were told by our principal is, you're going out shooting, we went to Omaland, and they said, you're going out shooting, that's great, just keep it quiet.
All right, which makes it a violation of the law.
Use silencers!
Yes. Exactly. Now, the other one that the governor is proposing is closing a gun show loophole. That one seems to be very controversial, and it seems to be that there's a lot of people who are very pro-gun who are for it, very pro-gun who are against it. We're going to see how the details are written. I can tell you flat out that if they're going to write the law to shut down gun shows, period, then there's going to be a serious problem. I can nearly guarantee you my entire caucus will be against it, and a great deal of across the aisle will be against it. You have a couple of very strong pro-gun candidates on the other side. Now, the magazines. I can pass it. Here's the way it was described to me, and I'm paraphrasing it, that you will not be permitted to have the magazine and the firearm that accepts the magazine within 20 feet of each other in a public place unless you're going to somewhere to use it.
Welcome to abomination.
Hold on, let me no, that's basically the way it is, that you will be allowed to have it if you're on your way to a shooting range or on your way to a farm or going hunting or whatever it is, that you will be permitted to have the gun and the magazine in the same place. But if you are going to a friend's house and you're going hunting the next morning, you would have to bring the gun to your friend's house, go home, get the magazines, and then bring the magazines to a friend's house. When I asked this, the governor's people said, we haven't written the law yet. We're not sure. There will be exceptions. What we're looking at is some sort of law that would require you to have the gun in your trunk and the magazines in the glove box, or vice versa, whatever it is. They're still writing
Isn't
the
that
law.
the rule that's on the books now?
Well, yes, there's regulations on the books now. There's no law, per se. And actually, I talked to several members of the NRA. They'd like to make the regulations law, because that way we can hopefully guide it in a way that makes sense. I know that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. But here and then there. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you something. If you guys bang up,
Yeah.
who's going to follow the law?
Well, of course, law-abiding citizens will.
Who's going to disobey that?
Criminals.
So what did that law do?
Absolutely nothing. It made anti-gun people feel better.
So why have a law like that? Right, to be self-regulated.
No, it's not.
So why is this discussion?
It's a discussion because, and
Anti-law people are voters?
yes, yes.
That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. You swear an oath, that's a contract to the people.
Yeah.
And if you break that oath, you just betrayed that oath and you committed treason.
Let me get to that at the end.
Anybody with that?
I have a mission for all of you in that regard. That's a very good
I will
point.
not compromise.
Very
His
nice.
sign says it's best over there.
Not comply. Very nice. Next one, the assault weapons ban. Mr. Governor, I'm not going to label first, but Mr. Governor Helper, sir, what is an assault rifle? He said, we don't know yet. I said, well, I said, we have some serious concerns that this ban is going to ban firearms that do not anywhere qualify for an assault rifle. If you're just making a semi-automatic rifle, you're going to cut into 1022s. You're going to cut into rifles that have not been used in a crime in this state ever. That's a problem. I'll come back to that. He said, we don't know. And then he said the words that we all love to hear. Well, these assault rifles are military weapons. He said they are military weapons. They're made for the military. They are made to kill people. And if you look at any gun magazine, that's how they advertise them. Last gun magazine I read was talking about killing groundhogs and shooting tin cans. Now apparently in the state of Delaware categorized as people.
Representative Carney just wrote a letter to my husband in response to his gun control
Yeah.
they want. And he defines a military-style assault weapon as a weapon that fires 20 rounds in 10 seconds. It says that the high-capacity magazine...
20 rounds of 10 seconds. Well,
20 rounds in 10 seconds.
not be on the floor for serious debate until March. Now, in this state, and I'd like to brag to some of my friends out of state, in this state, we have a very open government. You can come and you can sit in on session. You can come and you can sit in on committee hearings. You can come and make your voice heard directly to the people who will be voting. You can hear from their lips how they feel about these issues. So in addition to those letters and phone calls, I strongly encourage you, if you have some time, and I know not everybody does, if you have some time, sit in on a meeting, figure out where these different bills, what committees they're going to go to.
Where's the schedule? Where's that posted?
I will keep everybody informed when the laws come out of where they are going. Usually you can look it up online. But I will keep people informed as much as possible. I imagine most of these bills will go to one of two places: the Public Safety Committee, of which unfortunately I'm not a member, or the Judiciary Committee, of which I am. Yes, sir.
Okay, are they going to do the same stunt like they did with a couple other times that they tried in the past, where they turn around, dismiss everything, sit, and then do it in the closed chambers behind the walls after they got rid of us?
It's very possible.
Because that's what they have been doing in the past.
It's very possible. The more you demand they don't, the more you say that there will be ramifications if they do. You know? Sure.
Why else would a politician say, well, most of my voters want this? You swore no.
Yeah.
If that voter is anti-gun, why do they live in the land of free?
Because what they will tell you is, and I'm not going to speak for all of them, what they will tell you is that they swore an oath to upheld the Constitution as their voters see fit. No kidding. No kidding. That's why I'm standing here. I mean, my views on the subject should be fairly clear. I'm not going to vote against the rights of others. Now, I'm going to do my best, and I have some ideas in that regard of how to keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people and how to keep guns in the hands of the right people. We'll see. I'm a freshman, but that doesn't mean I'm quiet. I was not elected by the people who voted for me to be a quiet observer. Yes, ma'am. Expanded background checks, National Mental Health Registry. Here's the thing. If we are really serious about this issue, we need to look at what caused these horrible massacres. We need to look at that and say, okay, what would have stopped the Virginia Tech shooting? A man who was labeled as a danger to himself or others. Why was he then able to buy a firearm? No, that's Connecticut. I'm going all the way back to Virginia Tech.
About to add your pharmaceutical drugs, the Zoloft, the Paxil,
Well, here's the thing. The counselor from which he was seeking help at the school said he is a danger to himself and others. So what he did was, well, then I'm just not going to go back to you. And he went and purchased firearms. Tell me, is that not the wrong person? Why was this not reported? Why was there not a system in place? The NRA has been calling for that for years. For years they've been calling for that, and they have encountered resistance. Well, now is the time to say there are ways to write this so as not to deprive people who have mental health conditions for which they wouldn't be a danger to themselves. Listen, you can categorize arachnophobia as a mental condition. Does that mean you shouldn't be allowed to buy a firearm because you're afraid of spiders? No, of course not. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, even then, now you say, for me it's centipedes. So but does that mean I'm in danger of myself and others? No, I'm in danger of
capacity legs.
It's millipedes? Okay. Now we're all going to start sharing. Careful. That might get you on a list now. So, sir.
Something I want to share with you, most of our congressional leaders, per se, don't understand. You can define assault weapon, right? Cocaine can be an assault weapon, beer can be an assault weapon. But the problem is it doesn't define the firearm. The action with that firearm defines that firearm. Go after the criminals, do what you got to do. But my weapons are for defense, protection of my family and my liberties.
Should that make it a defense implement?
I'm not saying you, when I say you,
I understand.
the establishment that you represent all too often defines our weapons as assault. That's not the purpose.
I was in a conversation with a legislator the other day who said, well, just look at it. It's AR-15, assault rifle 15.
American rights 15.
And then the other one, I can tell people who are new to this issue when all of a sudden all of these rifles are now called Bushmasters. I'm not sure Bushmaster really appreciates that kind of press, although I'm sure their business is doing quite well right now. But again, it just shows I told this directly to one of the governor's staff. Listen, gun laws are often written by people who don't own guns. It's like creating traffic laws by people who don't have a driver's license. I asked, please include me in the writings of these laws. At least then they can make sense. Doesn't mean I'm going to vote for them, but at least then they're going to make sense.
Well,
I
don't
haven't
understand
gotten a phone call back.
Something else to add on to that. I don't understand why a vehicle that can go 120 miles an hour is not considered an assault vehicle. I mean, if that's the case, then why don't you governor every vehicle that can't go over the posted speed limit? Well, that would make much more sense because more people are killed with vehicles than there are with weapons.
Far more. I asked my staff to look up murder rates in Delaware by weapon.
Never let that happen.
From 2007 to 2011, in the state of Delaware, there were a total of, combined, all 5 years, 2 deaths in the state of Delaware by rifles of any style, shape, caliber, or whatever. 2. And for this, they're trying to deprive us of an entire category of rifle. It's unacceptable. Total of 7 deaths by shotguns. If you remove the city of Wilmington from the equation, handgun deaths go down to about the same level. And yet, over 100 deaths last year from driving accidents. How many of those by drunk driving? Is this really the safety? I mean, tell me, are you really trying to improve public safety, or you just don't like people who own guns? Is it really that you're trying to? I'm sorry?
Criminals don't follow law.
Precisely.
We do.
Right.
Why is
Trying to commit felony, they can
Considering the wording is that anyway, are any of the people that are actually making the law considering the wording of it, like infringing, it means not to limit our right to search guns.
Anything.
I can tell you flat out that the people writing these laws, some of them are gun owners. However, a lot of times what happens is, despite being gun owners, the emotional shouting of the anti-gun movement is louder than the logic of the pro-gun movement. The fact is, the governor and those who are pushing this anti-gun agenda have no reason to take their time. They have no reason to take their time. They're going to want this as fast as possible because, and it's terrible to say, because the farther away they get from the tragic events of December, the harder it's going to be to pass laws that require emotional reaction.
Why is the governor against armed guards in schools like the NRA is for? He seems to be adamantly against them. I saw him on PBS. He's head of the governor's council, and he just ridiculed the idea.
Yes. I'm not going to speak for the governor in that one. I haven't spoken to him. I haven't spoken to any of his staff about it. But I will tell you this. A lot of those on the other side of the aisle from me who are pushing the anti-gun agenda do not seem to want any involvement in studies that would ask how to improve school safety.
Well, what about the dare officers that are already there? They're armed.
Yeah. I remember that that there was an armed guard in Smyrna High when I was in, because I was in high school after the tragic events of Columbine. I was in high school at the time.
I have a
And there
follow-up
were
question.
changes.
Talking about school safety. Okay, we've got fire safety
Yep.
is underneath the Delaware State Fire Marshal.
Yes.
They have rules and regulations about safety systems for fires.
Yes.
We've got sprinklers. There's all sorts of things mandated.
Yes.
Shouldn't we have some sort of standard statewide
Yes.
for security at schools?
Yes.
I mean, look at these incidents. It started way back in Colorado at Columbine.
Yep.
We don't have the CCTV footage. What if there was multiple people involved? Wouldn't they want to be able to identify this?
Yep.
What if a 10-man team of Al Qaeda terrorists come across the border and wipe out a school?
The other
How
thing-
come there's no cameras? How come we don't see any video footage?
The other thing that the governor is asking for, and this was part of the meeting, the governor originally asked for every single school in the state to have some sort of plan in that regard, in what they need, and that kind of idea, a school plan for the tragic, the awful event of an intruder within 5 years. He is expanding that. He now wants it in 2, and he will provide the funding early to make it 2. And he's removing it from the principals of the school, and he's placing that under the Department of Homeland Security.
I'm opposed to expanding government in any way. I think the teachers that are responsible enough to take the course become very civil permit. That's all we need.
And many of them are. Many of them
That's
are.
all we need. We don't need any more government.
Within 2 years, there's going to be cameras, but by the end of this month, they're going to encroach on our gun rights.
Precisely.
That makes sense, right? This, if it's more guns, more crime, and all, if we put more guns in school, and everybody here, I'm sure, feels this way. If we put more guns in school, it's more guns, that's crazy. Well, how do you protect people? Seriously, let's look at the world. What's protection detail?
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. In fact,
People need to be held accountable for betraying this country and that oath they swore.
Yep.
Because that's not just something they do, then they market their voters for next election. That's unacceptable.
now keep in mind that we are that there's two facets to this as well. There's a federal level, and that there's the state level. State level, we're fighting it, and not only are we fighting it, that we're also people like me. I'm here to ridicule some of the basis for the law. I mean, you can take a law that's a good idea and write it into a bad idea. You can't take a law that's a bad idea and write it into a good idea. And so that's some of the problem that we're experiencing now. But also, it's not just state legislators. You also have to send those emails, phone calls to your national legislators as well. I know it seems like sometimes they won't listen, and I've gotten the emails from my constituents who said, listen, they're not listening. But the stronger and louder the voice is, the harder it is for them to push what they're trying to push. Here and then there. And then I have to get out of the hole.
As part of the proposed legislation, are you guys doing anything to give longer sentences to keep these criminals in jail when they are caught with firearms that they shouldn't have instead of letting them back out on the street or
Yes.
committing crimes?
Yes, we're going to try and increase. Straw purchase penalties. We're going to. One of the proposals is one where you have to report a lost or stolen firearm within 48 hours of knowing that it's been lost. That was my question. Once you've learned that your firearm has been lost, you must report it. That way, it prevents somebody who is a straw purchaser from buying a firearm, handing it to a bad guy, and then turning around saying, I lost it 6 months ago, I don't know what happened to it. It could be written in such a way that's
That
bad.
doesn't exactly answer my question. My question is more, once a criminal commits an act, and they go in and they hold up to 7-Eleven, you guys are letting them back on the street.
Right.
So what are you doing to keep these people in prison that you know are violent, that you know are committing violent crimes, instead of punishing us law-abiding citizens?
Yeah, Representative Steve Snick, another freshman representative from down in Sussex County, he brought up that exact point. He said one of the problems is that we have a timeline in the court system where they try and rush things through and get the penalty in place without looking at the entirety of the crime. Yes, we are addressing that. We're telling the governor's people it's something we want. They're going to look into it. Again, we don't have the legislation in front of us. They said that might be part of any straw purchase increased penalty. We're looking at it. I don't have it in front of me. Nobody does.
You let these people back
Hold on, one second.
Getting back to this so-called assault weapon, why should the people not be allowed to have military weapons? If you read the Constitution, they intended the Second Amendment so that the people they'd be a military bulwark against tyranny of the federal government.
Yeah, the British really didn't like the idea that we had their weapons, did they?
They're all the people.
Yeah, the British really didn't like the idea that we had their weapons, and they thought, you know what? If we seize the arms and arms supply at Concord, you know, this little rebellion of farmers with pitchforks will remain that. We'll be able to. We can force these taxes down their throat.
Assault weapons, man. I think it's totally unconstitutional.
That's right.
One fight at a time.
We need to stop being on the defensive, and we need to be on the offensive and restore.
One of the reasons why I think that they are trying to push this ahead so fast.
1,000 feet of a school, you will be allowed to keep your firearm in private. You won't be allowed to bring it in public. Right. If you leave the house with it, you've got a problem, and then you can't bring it back to your house. Here, sir.
I just want to say thank you for coming out.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
My pleasure. Very happy to be here.
It's very important that we definitely to keep writing our representatives.
Please,
And I
please,
just wanted to
please.
share that there's a really easy way to do that I found. If you actually go to Ruger's website, there's a link on their site.
Really?
It's very easy. You click on it, it actually brings up, you put in your zip code, it brings up all your representatives, all the way up to Obama, and you can write your letter and hit submit, and it will actually give you a confirmation of it.
Oh, good. Wait, does that allow me as a legislature to reply to that email? Yeah, I've been replying to everyone.
Yes. It actually puts the email address,
For those of you who didn't hear that, this gentleman pointed out that if you go to Ruger's website, there's some sort of system where you can email all of your elected officials in your area and make your voice heard. That's pretty cool.
One last thing. I'd like to see some legislation about drones.
Legislation on drones.
Flying over the state and from the state.
I got a funny story about somebody I know shooting down a drone that was flying over their farm and then charging the government to come get it.
I don't want to get far from what you think. It's not only gun control, it's also about crime.
Yes.
The last 2 law enforcement officers in the last 5 years killed in the state of Delaware. One was with a knife and one was with a gun. The guy that was killed with the gun was Chad Spicer, and it was done by a guy that was on probation for a gun crime, and it was released to the public. Don't take my word, check your facts, okay? And when our law enforcement officers are encountering this, what do you think our citizens are? That's absolute bull. So I encourage you to, if you take something away from this today, it's not just about the gun control, it's about the crime that's involved and the people that's doing it.
Well,
and our system, it's broke.
One of the things, if you'll remember, last year was the home invasion bill. And what I got told was the opposition to the home invasion bill, why it was argued down to 5 years, was that by making it more than 5 years, you're encouraging a criminal who's broken into somebody's home to say, well, if I'm going to go away for more than 5 years, I might as well kill the person.
Well, you know what? Here's my biggest problem with all this. Okay, I got to get up and go to work every day. I have to pay my taxes. I got to support everybody. You know, everybody's in these jails. Why are we making it such a nice holiday for them to go out and kill somebody? Because they can't afford to be out on the street because they didn't want to get up and go to work.
Yeah.
You know, why not bring death penalty back? Why are people so hard up to say, oh God, this guy killed 25 people, we shouldn't put him to death, let's just pay for him to be in jail. Let's give him 3 meals a day. Let's give him an education. Let's let him work out and do all these other things.
The death penalty debate is another one, and I've been getting emails about that as well. Again, that's going to be coming up.
I say we just
same
give
thing. I
the
encourage you.
victims
It's the
10
same
minutes
thing.
alone with the guy. That's right. I'm for that. Problem solved. That's right. You say, we'll fix the deficit.
Hold on one.
Okay, going back to kind of what this guy was saying here, and voting in general, if you're going to, I guess you could say, start talking about, okay, here's our plan, should you violate our rights, you really got to have something in place. And I think all of y'all start thinking in the back of your head, if this thing goes south, what's going to happen? And as much as I like my firearms, like other people's having guns, and I like shotguns, I like rifles, if it goes south, you're going to need some real hardware, which means you're going to need help, international help. If you look at what happened, this wouldn't have happened if you didn't have guys in other countries getting contacts and shoring up alliances with other countries and with other people. It ain't going to be just here.
Ironically, what you're talking about, there's a gentleman over here with one of my heroes, Ben Franklin. A quote from Ben
And
Franklin.
Adams went, and I hate to say it, but it hadn't been for the French. Had it not been for the Spanish, had it not been for the Dutch, this would be the American.
Wait. French, Spanish, Dutch, all countries, a lot of their citizens resent us for our Second Amendment.
Different people from different times, but this is 2013. We don't just go to our elected representatives. We can't go. Different people from different times, but this is 2013. We don't just go to our elected representatives. We can't go to the world community. I know as bad as that sounds, but you don't see people in Syria petitioning Assad. They want outside help. We're at the point you need to start thinking that.
You gotta be careful with that.
You got to be careful. Yes, you do, but you got to play that game just like Franklin and Jefferson did.
England had an agenda out of the Civil War.
The U.S. is
Divide
never relied on other people.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into this, I'm rude. If you'll excuse me, I just want to thank you again for coming out. I really I'm Representative Jeff Spiegelman. Most of my colleagues, I I imagine we'll be at the, with my colleagues who are pro-gun, we'll be at the Second Amendment rally tomorrow as well. There's an awful lot of them. I told them about this, and they said, you know, I just can't go to two the same day, or the same weekend. I just don't have the time. But I wanted to make sure I was here. I do have business cards on me. If I run out, I'll run into my office and get more.
Are you
So
going
if
to
you'd
be a
like one,
representative of all the people of Delaware, or just your constituents in your district?
well, for me, I'm standing up for the Constitution. I swore an oath to do that, and not the Constitution that some special interest group saw fit, but the Constitution that was established. And as it turns out, ladies and gentlemen, you live in a great state where the Delaware Constitution is actually even more clear than the national Constitution in terms of people should own firearms.
Look at the flag.
Yeah, how about that? How about that? All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. This is not a problem.